Political chaos in Dalton. The tumultuous reign and fall of Mayor Tiffany Henyard. In Dalton, Illinois, political instability has long been part of the landscape, but recent events surrounding Mayor Tiffany Henyard have pushed the town into unprecedented turmoil. Known for her confrontational leadership style and frequent clashes with village trustees, Henyard has often been a magnet for controversy. However, what transpired at the most recent village board meeting turned routine dysfunction into full-blown political theater, shaking the community to its core. The meeting, originally scheduled to take place at Village Hall, was relocated to the Park District building to accommodate an overwhelming crowd of residents. People weren't just there out of civic duty. They came in anticipation of yet another clash between Henyard and the trustees, whose relationship had been deteriorating for months. Disagreements over policy, appointments, and general governance had created a pressure cooker environment. Still, few expected the chaos that would ultimately unfold. From the moment Henyard took the floor, it was clear she wasn't there to conduct a standard government meeting. Abandoning typical procedures, she launched into a highly charged and theatrical performance that felt more like a power play than a political discussion. Her aim appeared not to be governance, but dominance. The meeting quickly descended into chaos. The live broadcast was abruptly cut, leaving residents in attendance, and those watching from home stunned, rather than addressing the town's urgent needs. Henyard seemed more concerned with commanding attention. Her conduct appeared designed for spectacle rather than substance. As her behavior grew more erratic, more residents began questioning her serving fitness. What many once viewed as boldness had now begun to look like recklessness. The mayor, who once promised progress, was now accused of turning public service into a self-serving performance. Amid all the theatrics were serious issues that had brought people to the meeting in the first place, including allegations of questionable spending by the mayor's office. But Henyard didn't address those concerns. Instead, she monopolized the meeting with outbursts and defiance. Her refusal to follow standard protocols, cooperate with trustees, or even engage in civil discussion only intensified the growing public distrust. Her style of leadership was no longer seen as merely controversial. It had become destructive. With cooperation among village officials essentially dead, trust had eroded completely. Then, in a stunning move that further fueled the fire, Henyard attempted to hold a separate meeting at Village Hall, deliberately ditching the official board meeting scheduled at the Park District. This unsanctioned gathering was intended to show she still held power, but it backfired dramatically. Only 2 trustees showed up, far short of the quorum needed to conduct official business. Humiliated, Henyard left abruptly and drove to the Park District building, where the official meeting was still underway. What happened next defied all expectations. Henyard barged into the meeting unannounced and uninvited, immediately escalating tensions in the room. She ignored the board authority and declared loudly, "I am the mayor of the village of Dalton." Rather than asserting leadership, the declaration underscored her isolation. Many in the crowd turned their backs in protest, while the atmosphere in the room turned frigid. This was no longer just a local dispute. It was a public meltdown. The confrontation didn't just widen the rift between Henyard and the trustees. It exposed a complete breakdown in local governance. Rather than regaining control, Henyard pushed herself further into political exile. The public spectacle of her outbursts and power plays had turned her into a polarizing figure, not just in Dalton, but well beyond its borders, and came a major legal blow. A temporary restraining order was issued, preventing Henyard from making any new appointments without board approval. It was a powerful statement that the judicial system had stepped in to impose boundaries she had refused to acknowledge. The restraining order effectively isolated her from her own government. Residents, already angry over financial allegations, now had a court-sanctioned confirmation that Henyard's conduct had crossed the line despite the restraining order. Henyard attempted to push forward with appointing a new police chief, but the crowd at the meeting wouldn't allow it. She was booed and shouted down by residents demanding accountability. When she attempted to declare the meeting illegal in an effort to reassert control, no one listened. Witnesses described the scene as complete madness. As tensions escalated, Henyard was eventually forced to leave the meeting, her authority having all but collapsed outside the building. Things deteriorated further. Furious and visibly shaken, Henyard stormed off. Police officers, already stationed nearby due to the heightened tensions, intervened to de-escalate the situation. Rumors swirled that an altercation had occurred between Henyard and another official, though these claims remain unverified. Still, the meeting was effectively over. But the chaos had not yet reached its peak in a shocking final twist. Henyard was arrested that day. The arrest marked not only a dramatic turning point in Dalton's political saga, but a symbolic fall from power. The same mayor who once inspired hope for a brighter future in Dalton had now become its most divisive and destabilizing figure. Her arrest confirmed what many had feared, that her leadership had moved beyond controversy into full-blown crisis. As she was led away in handcuffs, the town watched in disbelief. Her dramatic rise had ended in an equally dramatic fall. Henyard's ambition, once seen as a force for change, had morphed into a self-destructive spiral. The very traits that once set her apart, boldness, defiance, and fierce independence, had become liabilities. Her downfall unfolded in full view of the public, and with it, the community was left to confront the wreckage. In the aftermath of her arrest, Dalton finds itself in a precarious position. The political environment, once merely tense, is now fractured beyond recognition. The trust between elected officials and the public has been deeply damaged, and the mechanisms of governance are in disarray. What was supposed to be a system working toward the betterment of the community has been hijacked by drama, personal vendettas, and power struggles. Residents who once hoped for reform now face the sobering task of rebuilding a town left wounded by a mayor who lost sight of her responsibilities. The future of Dalton remains uncertain. Can the village restore the collaboration and integrity needed to move forward? Or will the shadow of Henyard's legacy continue to loom over its government? One thing is clear. The chaos surrounding Tiffany Henyard's tenure has left a lasting mark. Her rise and fall have become a cautionary tale about leadership, accountability, and the dangers of placing personal ambition above public service. The town of Dalton must now navigate the difficult path of recovery, hoping to one day move beyond the dysfunction that came to define her time in office. As Dalton begins a long process of healing, residents and officials alike are grappling with a hard truth. Rebuilding trust and restoring effective governance will take more than a new face in the mayor's office. It will take commitment, cooperation, and an unwavering dedication to the principles of transparency and accountability. Whether Dalton can rise from the ashes of this political implosion remains to be seen. But for now, the community is left to pick up the pieces of a government that crumbled under the weight of its own spectacle. The community's ability to move forward would depend on whether it could heal the divisions Tiffany Henyard had created and restore a sense of unity and purpose to Dalton's government. The political crisis in the village reached a boiling point when Henyard's increasingly erratic behavior, alleged financial mismanagement, and persistent defiance of governance procedures culminated in a dramatic downfall that stunned residents. This was not an isolated incident. It was a climax of years of tension, dysfunction, and controversy that had characterized her tenure from the start. Henyard's leadership was marked by confrontation. Rather than fostering collaboration, she repeatedly challenged the authority of village trustees and frequently made unilateral decisions without consultation. While many residents had hoped she would usher in a new era for Dalton, they were met instead with a mayor who often seemed more interested in control than consensus, more focused on spectacle than service. The tension between Henyard and the board of trustees escalated quickly as she continued to sidestep established governance practices, particularly in the matter of key appointments such as police chief and village attorney. Outrage grew. These positions had traditionally been decided in collaboration with the board, but Henyard bypassed those norms, making decisions on her own. Even her supporters began to question her methods. What became increasingly clear was that Henyard was asserting authority, not building leadership. Her refusal to engage with trustees and critics alike deepened the divisions in town government. Instead of working to resolve community issues, Henyard appeared to thrive in the dysfunction, allowing the political environment to grow toxic. The promise of progress gave way to public disillusionment. Dalton residents who once saw her as a strong leader were now faced with a mayor whose behavior had become erratic and defiant, and whose leadership was dragging the village into deeper crisis by the time the now infamous village board meeting occurred. Henyard's political capital had all but vanished. What should have been a routine discussion of village business turned into a circus. She attempted to push through controversial appointments, including a new police chief. Despite widespread opposition, the crowd was angry, and their frustration was loud and visible. They rejected her authority outright, and Henyard found herself isolated, unable to command respect or cooperation. The meeting spiraled into chaos. Her inability to control the room or restore order was a clear signal that her leadership was collapsing. Then came the most shocking moment. Henyard was escorted out in handcuffs. It was a powerful symbol. The dramatic end to a reign marred by dysfunction, conflict, and alleged misconduct. Her arrest marked more than a personal downfall. It was a turning point for Dalton. The mayor's disregard for legal norms and her inability to govern effectively had plunged the town into disarray. Trust and leadership had eroded, and the political landscape lay in ruins now. Dalton faces a difficult question. Can it recover? Rebuilding trust, restoring order, and moving forward require new leadership and a collective effort to repair the damage. Henyard's time in office, once seen as an opportunity for change, had become a cautionary tale. Her dramatic fall underscored a painful truth. Without accountability and cooperation, even the highest office in a small town can become a source of crisis. Tiffany Henyard's political career had reached its breaking point. The question now facing Dalton was whether the town could recover from the chaos she had caused, and whether new leadership could emerge to restore order, rebuild trust, and repair a broken system. Henyard's time as mayor had been defined by scandal and confrontation. Her repeated defiance of established governance procedures, her efforts to bypass the village board, and her insistence on making unilateral appointments created an atmosphere of dysfunction that deeply undermined Dalton's political stability. What began as a hopeful tenure under a self-proclaimed agent of change quickly devolved into a whirlwind of controversy and growing public distrust as tensions within the government mounted. Troubling rumors began to circulate. Allegations emerged that Henyard had misused public funds, particularly through excessive and questionable travel expenditures. The reports painted a picture of a mayor more concerned with personal benefit than public service. Thousands of taxpayer dollars were allegedly spent on lavish trips and high-end accommodations. Even as the town struggled financially, the image of a reformer began to fade, replaced by that of a leader out of touch with the realities of her community. Despite mounting allegations, Henyard remained defiantly unapologetic. She dismissed the accusations as politically motivated, claiming she was a target of a coordinated smear campaign designed to undermine her leadership. But as leaked documents and financial reports came to light, the claims became harder to ignore. The sense of betrayal among residents deepened, especially as it became clear that public funds may have been diverted to serve private interests. The growing scandal soon attracted outside scrutiny. State and federal authorities, including the FBI, began investigating Henyard's financial dealings. What had started as a local governance issue was now a full-blown legal crisis. As the pressure intensified, Henyard doubled down on her defiance. Rather than acknowledge the growing divide, she continued to portray herself as the victim of a corrupt system conspiring against her. On social media, she framed herself as a lone warrior standing up to entrenched power structures. While this message resonated with a small base of loyal supporters, it further alienated the broader public. Her siege mentality only exacerbated the turmoil. Once a symbol of possibility, Henyard had become a deeply polarizing figure, turning former allies into skeptics and energizing her critics. What had once in a community with shared desire for progress was now fractured along political lines. The crisis came to a head during a dramatic confrontation at a village trustee meeting. Unable to legally convene a government session due to a lack of quorum, Henyard stormed into a trustee gathering held at the local park district building. She entered uninvited, disregarded protocol, and attempted to commandeer the proceedings. Her brazen move was met with outrage, boos, shouts, and even thrown objects from members of the community who had grown weary of the chaos. Her insistence on appointing a new police chief without following proper procedures further inflamed the situation. To trustees, many of whom had long been at odds with Henyard, her actions were no longer just controversial, they were dangerous. The disorder that followed was emblematic of the entire Henyard era, marked by confrontation, disruption, and a blatant disregard for rules. What should have been a routine civic meeting devolved into chaos. Henyard's inability to engage constructively or work within legal frameworks was on full display. The meeting ended with the mayor being escorted out in handcuffs, a shocking and humiliating conclusion that signaled the collapse of her administration. The arrest marked the end of Henyard's political reign and cemented perception that she was no longer fit to govern. In that moment, the mayor who once embodied promise and progress was reduced to a symbol of dysfunction and failure. The community watched in disbelief as law enforcement led her out. For many, it was a moment of catharsis, but it was also a sobering reminder of how far Dalton had fallen in the wake of her arrest. Dalton was left reeling. The town's political system was in tatters. Residents were disillusioned, trustees divided, and the government paralyzed. Deep scars remained from Henyard's combative tenure, and the path forward seemed anything but clear. While Henyard continued to claim she was fighting for people, the growing body of evidence, public resentment, and mounting legal action told a different story. Each new revelation further eroded her credibility. Any hope of political recovery faded as it became apparent that Henyard's authority had been irreparably damaged now. Dalton must face the long and difficult process of rebuilding. The damage left behind is not only procedural but emotional. A town once unified now torn by distrust. Re-establishing faith in local leadership will require more than just new faces. It will require transparency, cooperation, and commitment to accountability. Whether Dalton can recover from the deep divisions Henyard left in her wake remains uncertain. But one fact is undeniable. Her time in office left an indelible mark on the town. The fallout from her leadership, her defiance, her alleged misconduct, and her dramatic downfall will shape Dalton's political landscape for years to come.